Good morning and welcome to Woodland Fitness. So, for starters, my voice is starting to come back and I'm coughing a lot less. I'm definitely not sick anymore, but I just wind up with lingering coughs that go on way too long and they drive me nuts. However, my voice is mostly back, so I'm finally starting to be okay with how my voice sounds on recording again. It's you know how sometimes when you listen to your voice, you just can't stand how it sounds no matter how you record it. Well, when your voice is shot and you have like your voice is cracking every 30 seconds, not to mention you're coughing on top of that and just sounding gross makes it way worse. So, welcome back to Woodland Fitness, where my voice is no longer shot and where I can actually have real conversations without dying every couple minutes from that cough. Anyway, on our last episode, we talked about how I usually look at starting a program. We talked about some of the exercises that I include, focusing mostly on compound exercises with a few isolation movements. And I also kind of vaguely mentioned how you could split that up depending on how many days a week that you can work out. So today, what I wanted to focus on, I wanted to keep going down that road because I think that it's important to understand, let's say you're doing a workout program with a trainer, you want to understand kind of their thought process behind that workout program. Some trainers are great about explaining every single step of the process, and some of them do a really good job of explaining why they include certain exercises, why some of them are certain reps, certain sets. A lot of times those are very well explained by trainers, but sometimes they're not. And sometimes you wind up on a workout program where you don't have a trainer running you through it. You just have the program that you purchased online, and maybe you don't know if it's a good program or not. And maybe you even want to build your own program. That's kind of where I started, honestly. Initially, I started losing weight after I saw a picture of myself that made me realize that I was overweight. And as I was doing it, I wanted to, one, understand how these trainers put together their workout programs, and two, I kind of wanted to be able to build my own programs. And so, in order to do that, I went ahead and got certified as a personal trainer, which is an expensive way to learn how to build your own programs. And I don't know, I guess it was during that first trainer course that I kind of realized that I wanted to do more than just build my own workout programs. I realized that I really enjoy teaching, because as I was taking this course, I actually had a lot of people asking me questions. And I always get asked questions when I tell people that I'm a personal trainer. Usually it's about their diet. Sometimes they want to tell me about their workout program, which is awesome. Honestly, I could talk about working out all day long for years if someone would let me, because there's so many different ways that you can approach working out. There's ways that are more backed in research, and then there's ways that may not have been studied yet, but are so commonly used that you can't really say it's just an anecdote anymore. And there's different things that we know from the research that help us build better workout programs. I kind of lost my train of thought there. Oh, yes. Anyway, so I started taking the personal trainer course just to kind of learn how to build my workout programs. And fun fact, they don't really tell you how to build a workout program in your personal trainer course. They kind of give you the same gist I gave you in our last episode. They talk about compound movements, they talk about isolation movements, and we do talk about certain rules that most programs are held by, which one of my favorite rules is the rule of specificity. Wow, that was great. Anyway, rule of specificity. So, if I'm wanting to get better at bench press, one of the fastest ways for me to get better at bench press is to make sure that I'm including bench press in my workout. And that's that law of specificity. There are a few other rules that we use to help guide our programs, but none of them really help build our programs. And when you talk to different trainers, you'll see that we all have different approaches. The way that I gave you in my last episode is not everyone's approach. That's just how I approach programming. And I've met enough trainers that I know that we're all very unique and that we all have different styles. And to be honest, it kind of depends on what your goals are, who or what kind of program will get you there fastest. What I do know is some very basic things that are musts. If you want to build strength, you're going to have to bump the weight up. And we're going to have to progress that weight as often as we can. At some point, we do hit a plateau, and it takes a little bit more maneuvering to build your program up to continue building your strength. So for instance, there was a long time where I could just keep adding 5 pounds to my deadlift every single week. I can't do that now. My current deadlift PR is 455 pounds. And right now, the way that I've got my program built is I'm not going all the way up to 455 when I am working out. Usually I'm stopping at about 90% of that. And I'm just trying to get stronger, add weight to that 90%. And that's one of the ways that we can kind of approach that. There are so many different ways that you can approach building strength, but it comes down to you have to add more weight. You're not going to build strength by doing the same weight every week. Another rule that I absolutely stand by is if you want to get better at a particular exercise, you have to do the exercise. We can add accessories to kind of help build strength around that movement. So for instance, when I'm looking at my bench press, one of the things that I add in there is I always add a dumbbell press in. However, my strength in dumbbell press is not going to directly relate to my strength in bench press. It will help, and it helps build the strength that I need, but it's not going to make me better at bench press. Anyway, some of the other things that I look at when I'm building a program is where I'm at in my current phase of training. So if I'm starting out, which for most of the people that I work with, they've never done any kind of weightlifting, or if they have done weightlifting, it's usually with a high school weightlifting coach. And no shade to high school weightlifting coaches, but they have way too many kids in their groups to be able to teach proper form to individuals and to teach people how to really reach their maximum potential. There are absolutely exceptions to that, but with the people that I wind up working with, sorry guys, if you're listening, I don't mean that I get stuck with you. I mean that you are the people that I wind up working with. They usually had a weightlifting coach that just either didn't know a whole lot about weightlifting programming, or they had way too many students to keep track of people's forms, and they kind of just had them do the same exercises over and over again, which is a totally valid way. I've done group fitness classes, and when I am running a class of 30 people, the best I can do is correct any form that looks dangerous, which is not a great way to run a class. I want to be able to correct individual form and make sure that you are getting the most out of that lift. That's why I prefer one-on-one training. Fitness classes just kind of don't have that same interaction, and for me, I just feel like I can't give you the same information that I want to give you. Now, back onto what I was looking at, most of the people that I work with starting out, or they've had some experience before, but it's really not as much experience as I want them to have. And so I start them in kind of a beginner's phase where we're doing usually 3 to 5 sets, and I keep it to about 3 to 4 reps. It's a little bit different for the isolation movements, but for the compound movements, I'm keeping in that 3 to 4 rep range because 1, I want to start building strength. 2, I want you to get familiar with the movement without getting super fatigued. And that last one is the most important. Because usually if I start you out with a high rep range, we're going to get you fatigued before I get you comfortable with the form that we're doing. And I want you very comfortable with the form so that by the time we start bumping that, either the rep range up or the weights up, you're 1, safe, 2, not getting fatigued before you have perfect form, and 3, we're actually hitting what we're trying to go for. I've had a lot of people ask me if deadlift is a back exercise, and the short answer is no, but yes. And the long answer is a lot more complicated than that. Essentially, deadlifts work most of the muscle groups in your body, but the reason people ask me if it's a back movement isn't because of the fact that it's a full body movement that needs your back for support, especially when you're lifting conventional. You're leaning over way more, and so you're having to support it a lot more in your back. So people do typically feel it in their back more. Why they're asking me is usually because they don't have very good form. Their back is nice and curved, and they're lifting that weight. I'm sure most people have heard the phrase lift with your leg, not with your back. And that applies to deadlifting. If you're pushing with your legs, you're in a great position to lift a lot of weight. If you're just pulling the weight, you're going to wind up feeling it almost exclusively in your back. And that's why a lot of people approach me and ask me if it's back movement. Now, along that same note, when we're starting with those low reps, that really gives us an opportunity to kind of push the weight that you're comfortable with. Most of the clients that I've worked with aren't used to lifting very heavy, or since they've never weightlifted at all, I give them a set of dumbbells to do a dumbbell press for the first time, and they tell me they can't lift it. And then I surprise them the next week by showing them that they can in fact lift that dumbbell that I gave them that they thought was too heavy. Most of the time in that early phase, really what we're getting is we're getting used to the movement. You already have a certain amount of muscle, and you can lift more than you think you can. And part of that is kind of just learning how to do the movement. Some movements have a bigger learning curve, like bench press, squat, and deadlift. Usually anything with free weights is going to have a bigger learning curve than when you hop on a machine. Machine's kind of set, makes it easy for you to do your movement the way it's set up. But if you're doing free weights, there's a lot more give here and there. One of my favorites is when I'm teaching someone how to dumbbell press. One of the first things you'll see someone do is you'll see the weight go way out here and then swoop back in. And so one of the things that I teach is to make sure that as they're pressing, they're keeping them nice and close as they're pressing up. But obviously it's a movement that you haven't done before and that you're learning for the first time, and so there's going to be some of that give. So starting out, I like to stick to that low rep range, 3 to 5 sets. I stick to higher sets for the compound movement, lower sets for the isolation movements. Usually I do that just to put more emphasis on the compound movements, because that is where we're going to see most of our strength gains. That's where we're going to see most of our progress. The isolation movements will absolutely help with those things, but I want the emphasis on the compound movements. Now, the other thing that I look at is rest periods. So when I'm looking at the program I just described, higher sets, lower reps, what I want is to have about 2 minutes of rest in between each set. If I can push it, I like to push more towards the 3-minute range. And once we start pushing the weight, which that doesn't really apply in this beginning phase, you don't need it as much. But once we start really pushing the weight, I want to start bumping into the 5-minute range for some of those sets. Now for the isolation movements, and there are people that disagree with me on this. I usually stick to about 1 minute to 2 minutes, depending on how fatigued you are from that set. Usually, in order to get full contraction, you need about 2 to 3 minutes of rest. The more rest time you get, the more your muscles have the ability to recover the energy needed to produce full contraction. However, isolation movements are a lot less fatiguing, and I don't feel like I need that full 2 minutes usually. And so usually this is more focused on time. To save a little bit more time, I focus more on just getting that 1 minute in between rest for the isolation movements. And that's kind of what I stick to, unless we're really bumping the weight up. And then I'm sticking more towards that 5-minute end, and then 3 minutes in between isolation movements. But it all depends on where you are in your programming. For the original example of that starting phase, I'm going to stick to 2 minutes between the compound lifts and about a minute between the isolation lifts. And I think that's going to be about it for today's episode. Go ahead and drop me a comment here on YouTube. Let me know anything that you want to learn more about when it comes to programming. I think our next episode is going to be more nutrition focused, so come prepared for some nutrition facts next week, and I will catch you next time. Bye.